You're standing on a cold, empty coastline. The wind is cutting. The sea is dark. For almost 500 years, Norse settlers lived on Greenland. And then, they just stopped writing back. No goodbye, no final letter. Just silence. That silence is the first clue that something went very wrong. In this video, you'll see how thousands of Vikings could build a life on the edge of the world, the three main suspects in their disappearance, and why many historians quietly put their money on a specific combination of them. So, let's open the file on the Vikings who vanished. When most people picture Vikings, they think of raids on monasteries, long ships on English rivers, or warriors in horned helmets they never actually wore. But around the year 985, a Viking leader named Eric the Red sailed west from Iceland and founded something much stranger and much riskier on Greenland. Archaeologists call it the Eastern Settlement and the Western Settlement, even though both were on the southwest coast. At their peak, these settlements may have held a few thousand people, spread across scattered farms. They built stone churches. They kept cattle, sheep, and goats. They hunted seals and traded ivory and furs. They weren't just raiders anymore. They were farmers, trying to turn a harsh new land into home. For centuries, they stayed in touch with the outside world. Ships came from Norway and Iceland. They carried iron, timber, and luxury goods in, and carried out hides, wool, and walrus ivory. There are even records of a Greenland bishop traveling to Europe. On paper, this looks like a remote but connected outpost of the Norse world. But buried in the archaeology, you can see the support starting to crack. The first big suspect isn't war or plague. It's the one thing you can't negotiate with: the climate. When the Greenland colonies were founded, the North Atlantic was in what historians call the medieval warm period. Temperatures were slightly milder, and that made marginal lands feel just barely farmable. Over the following centuries, the climate cooled again, sliding into a phase sometimes called the Little Ice Age. Shorter growing seasons, harsher winters, sea ice closing in around Greenland for more of the year. If you're a Norse farmer relying on hay to feed your cattle through the winter, that's a slow-moving disaster. Archaeologists see signs that pastures became less productive and that some farms were simply abandoned. It's easy to imagine a long grind of hunger, failed harvests, and families quietly slipping away to try their luck elsewhere. But climate alone doesn't explain thousands of people going quiet. For that, you need suspect number 2: money. For a long time, Greenland's big export was walrus ivory. Europe's elites used it for luxury objects, religious carvings, and art. As long as that ivory was valuable, people had a reason to risk dangerous voyages across the North Atlantic. Over time, elephant ivory from Africa became easier to get and more fashionable in Europe. Walrus tusks were no longer the must-have material they once were. If the price drops and the voyage is still deadly, fewer ships are going to make that trip. Some historians think the Greenlanders slowly lost their lifeline. With less trade, iron tools, timber, and other essentials became harder to replace. A colony that once felt connected could start to feel like a trap. If the story ended here, which would you pick as the main killer so far? Climate or lost trade? Keep your answer in mind and see if it changes after the next part. Because there's a third suspect. The Vikings weren't alone out here. Archaeological finds show that Inuit peoples, the ancestors of today's Greenland Inuit, were also present in the region during the later life of the Norse colonies. They were expert hunters, perfectly adapted to Arctic conditions, with technologies like kayaks, harpoons, and warm clothing made for icy seas. There are a few written hints that Norse and Inuit groups met. Some speak of skraelings, a Norse term for indigenous peoples. The sources suggest both trade and tension. One possibility is conflict. Some historians imagine clashes over hunting grounds or resources that the struggling Norse couldn't afford to lose. In that version, raids, violence, or pressure from better adapted neighbors might have helped push the colony over the edge. Another possibility is the exact opposite. Instead of being wiped out, some Norse may have slowly intermarried or merged with Inuit communities, leaving behind less of a clear Norse signature in the archaeological record. In that reading, The Vikings of Greenland didn't vanish into thin air. They melted into a different way of life. If you were stuck in that climate and met people who knew how to survive it better, would you fight them or join them? So, which is it? Famine, lost trade, conflict, or cultural blending? When archaeologists dig into old farm sites, they find hints, but not a single smoking gun. On some sites, they see a slow decline. Cattle bones get smaller and rarer, suggesting herds were shrinking or being culled. Seal bones become more common, suggesting people leaned harder on hunting. That looks like adaptation, but also like desperation. In at least one churchyard, skeletons still appear neatly buried, not piled up as if from a mass catastrophe. That makes a single sudden disaster, like a plague wiping everyone out overnight, less likely. Some farms show signs of being carefully cleaned out, as if the owners packed up and left rather than dying in place. But left for where? Iceland, Norway, new communities farther north, closer to Inuit hunting grounds? Put all three suspects together and you don't get one dramatic ending. You get something much harder to see while it's happening. A few families leave early, others hold on for another generation. Some die in place. Some change their way of life so much that later visitors don't even recognize them as the same culture. From a distance of 600 years, all of that can look like a single mystery. From the ground, it might have felt like a slow, painful series of hard choices. And that's exactly why this story still pulls us in. We're used to Vikings being the unstoppable ones, sailing into other people's worlds. Greenland flips that script. Here, they're the ones on the edge of survival, at the mercy of climate, trade routes, and neighbors who understand the Arctic better than they do. And it hits a nerve in the present. We see a society pushed by climate change, shifting economies, and migration. And we can't help wondering what our own maps will look like in a few hundred years. Thousands of Vikings built lives on Greenland's coasts. They raised children, told stories by the fire, and watched the same sun we see set behind walls of ice. Then, over time, their farms fell silent. Did they die in the cold? Did they sail away and vanish into other Norse communities? Did they stay but change so much that we stopped calling them Vikings at all? Right now, the best answer is that all of those threads might be true at once, woven together into a slow collapse instead of a single dramatic event. If you forced most experts to bet, they'd quietly point to climate stress plus the loss of trade, with conflict and blending layered on top. So now that you've seen the main suspects, what do you think? If you had to choose, would you blame the climate, the loss of trade, conflict with neighbors, or the choice to walk away and start over somewhere else? Comment frozen if you think climate change was the main killer. Comment trade if you think losing their market doomed them. Comment blended if you think they slowly merged into a different life. And share this with someone who loves real history that feels like a missing person case. If you want more ancient and medieval mysteries explained simply, but without sanding off the weird, unanswered parts, make sure you follow for more.